Hi, this is On Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Philosophical Coffee. If you are new to my channel, this is where I talk about the science of healing. Yeah, that's it. There you go. It's the science of healing. I use physics, math, logic, and psychology, philosophy, metaphysics to break down everything you need to know to heal. When we heal, we have this awesome spectrum of all the trauma and how horrible you might be feeling. And then we have all the that time and point of what happened to you that caused all of this. I go pre-trauma and I look at everything that's here to break down what caused the vulnerability to begin with, or the openness to begin with, that led to being traumatized. And when you resolve this, all of that goes away. So that's how I do it. And it's all done with physics and logic and math and science. It's like my shtick. So I had a wonderful, wonderful night last night. I was doing math, like algebraic equations, and I was breaking down. I was listening to Aristotle. I was knitting, and I was at some point I turned the audiobook off and I listened to yesterday's show, and it was giving me my perspective, like it was shifting my perspective so I could see what I was saying on the outside. And it opened up another insight for me that I really want to cover today because it was huge. I was on social media and I noticed this massive divide. It was very interesting. And it was, what do you think? What do you think this is? Was basically what it was on neurodivergence. And I started the conversation with, I believe that. And I said my thing. And sure enough, a few people got, well, I will be blunt. I had a narcissist who stepped in and projected their trauma on me. So I reemphasized that this was my opinion. And yeah, I left it alone after that. So I analyzed her response. I analyzed the whole walkthrough. And I realized that the primary core of a lot of people is underestimation. And it is vital. I've never looked into underestimating. And estimate, now that's economics. So underestimating yourself is economics. I cannot emphasize to you enough how much physics, economics, and mirror or optic physics are all very much part of our language. And the reason why is because we are mirrors, we are batteries, we are economics. And you can feel physics, math, and logic around 2 years old. That's when you start to feel it. And that's your intuition. Your intuition is 100% your ability to feel logic, math. When things don't feel right, what you are actually feeling is the logical mathematical equation of 10 chess moves ahead in the environment in which you are in. And that is intuition. You can feel it. And then the more logical, the more you get into physics, science, math, the stronger your intuition gets until you can see 60 moves ahead as opposed to 2 or 3 moves ahead. So that all being said, I'm looking at the word underestimate, which is basically forecasting. In economics, there is something called supply and demand. That is forecasting. Forecasting is in supply and demand when you use mathematical sales trajectory to determine how much sales you can expect, which tells you how much inventory you need to purchase so you can replenish your resources. Like I said, this is economics. And when we underestimate ourselves, or we overestimate ourselves, we are actually talking about our trajectory and our inventory on how well or how poorly we can or not do something. And basically, it's measuring our ability to succeed prior to even starting. That is what underestimating is. And I was evaluating the people in this area, and I realized it was a massive, oh, I never fell into this category, which is why I'm going, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense now. I was always of the category of problem solve and get me the hell out of here. So you can problem solve and get the hell out, or there's a group of people who literally just complain and they do nothing. They're not looking for a solution. They don't want a solution. Based off of what I'm seeing, they don't want a solution. I'm trying to figure out if that is a correct assessment, but my logic says that they don't want a solution. And that is interesting to me on so many levels. So I started to ask why they don't want a solution. And I realized that the reason why they don't want a solution is because they don't think that they can do it. And this one person came back to me and she replied to my comment, my belief that I was being insensitive because I was romanticizing. And I replied, this isn't romance, this is science. And she said, oh, I'm not a science babe. Ah, okay, all right. And I'm going, well, there's going to be a divide. Bottom line, logic says there's going to be a divide. And this is really, really interesting because psychology is trying to be science. And I think that summarized all of psychology. It's trying to be it lacks imagination and a whole lot of information, but they're trying. So psychology is trying to be science. And I'm looking at it going, okay. And people know that psychology is out there. And I know a lot of people try psychology and then they come back and they say it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they're trying to be science and they're not doing it right. They're using a lot of the wrong tools and they're missing a lot of the right tools, which is why psychology doesn't work. They're trying. So either people are skeptic in the science, and that's it right there. They're skeptic in the science. They think they lack the intelligence. Now, this brings me to a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm not going to be able to talk about this topic. I'm going to try this differently. I'm going to really do my best to try and talk about this topic without getting invested. Our intelligence. We live in a society that is abusive and mean to intelligent people. And we're also in a society where we are really mean to people who are lower than a certain average. So if you have an IQ of about 96, let's say 80 to 96, then you're good. But if you fall under 80, or if you fall over 96, you are going to be abused. This is not any way to cut this. You are going to be abused. And the people who are higher intelligence get abused far more than the people who are lower intelligence, by far. The people who are of the higher intelligence are referred to as crazy, And the people who are lower intelligence are referred to as stupid. And this is the category of intelligence and IQ abuse. The more intelligent you are, the more insane they deem you, and the more they abuse you. And we have a very high intolerance for people who are smart. Scientists and nerds fall into this category. And then you've got the uneducated who really sit comfortably, they think, in this little box of an IQ between 80 and 96. For reference, Einstein had an IQ of 160 and Tesla had an IQ of 120. Just to give you an idea of where they stood. So I'm looking at all of this going, okay. I don't know why. I think it's because they feel threatened. I really think it's because knowledge threatens the uneducated. Yeah, I really want to say that. Knowledge threatens the uneducated. Now, the reason why this is important and it relates to your healing is because where you fall in this category of your relationship to your intelligence, in addition to how you feel you are as far as intelligence goes, is going to determine what you think your skill level is for healing. And in order to pull that off, you basically need to have the ability to heal, which requires education and silence. But our society basically is determined to take all of the intelligent people and cram them into the stupid section. Bottom line. And what that ends up doing is there's a lot of really intelligent, genius people who think they're stupid. I was one of them. A year ago, I thought I was really stupid. Really stupid. And it was actually the lack of anyone else coming up with these ideas that made me start to think differently. It was me talking to other people, neuroscientists and physicists and psychologists, all looking at me going, holy shit, you're a genius. Going, okay, maybe I'm smart. And then I had an emotional battle. I had oh no, you're smart, you're stupid, you got to stay small. Oh no, you can't let people know how smart you are. And then, I dabbled in spirituality because I was afraid of showing my intelligence. It was safer to talk about chakra stones and witchcraft than it was to talk about physics. It was safer to talk about the universe rather than talking about how God is logic. And I very much hid in my earlier videos behind spirituality to protect myself until I felt safe enough to finally say, okay, I'm going to come out now and I'm going to show you what I know. And the more I started to show what I know, the more I started to realize just how much I really do know. And when it started to grow, I had this shrinking, I felt it. This was my abusive thing. When I was being beaten, this is what I did. So when I feel threatened, that's what I did. And as I talk more and more about my intelligence, my hand goes up. I can feel it. Boy, the subconscious mind talk, which is subconscious mind talk for I'm being smart. Please don't beat me. I used to blame my looks for a lot of the abuse that I got. I have made peace with my face, but I have not yet made peace with my mind. I go through these fits where I lash out at my own intelligence. If I wasn't intelligent, then I wouldn't have been beaten. I wouldn't have been hidden. I wouldn't have suffered. And I am huge on either you learn or you suffer. Those are your choices. I am huge on this because learning ends the suffering. And for me, it's no brainer. For me, it's there you go. You learn more so you can end your suffering. And I ran to learning because I suffered that much. And I see other people who don't. They prefer to sit in the suffering, which tells me, oh, you haven't suffered enough. That is how we learn. That is the indulgence avoidant spectrum. And yeah, and that's it. It's the indulge, avoid, integrate spectrum. And if you do not get a surplus of X suffering, you are not going to swing over. And you have to reach the point of enough. The point of enough is where change happens. And in order to get enough, you have to be gluttonous. And in order to be gluttonous, you have to overcome the guilt of gluttony and you have to indulge. It is only when you indulge that you finally flip that switch and you shift over to learning. And so many people just aren't and they don't. And it kept coming back to we underestimate ourselves. When you underestimate yourself, when you think you can't, and we do this, it is such a pandemic right now. We underestimate children. We underestimate our partners. We underestimate ourselves, and we are mirrors. So what we are really doing is underestimating ourselves and then projecting. That's what mirroring is. That's what mirrors do. They project. And then projecting that underestimation into our children and our partners and our loved ones is because, oh, well, I couldn't. There's no way you could. I literally had my brother say that to me. I couldn't, therefore you can't. Mirroring and optic physics. So it was very much an underestimation of what we can and can't do. And it brings me back to, why are people intimidated by science? I used to be intimidated by science, but I was frustrated. And I actually talked to my daughter about this yesterday. She was talking to me about her frustration with US government. And she says it's hard. Now, I'm going to be very blunt with you. Every time anybody thinks a subject is hard, it is because you are learning it out of order. That's it. That's it. If you feel something is hard, it's because you lack the foundational information to climb. Because when you have a solid foundation, oh, it's easy peasy. It's easy because you have all the data. So I started asking her a couple questions, and sure enough, she lacks a lot of the foundation to understand US government. And so we just need to go back and fill in the holes. Math is this way. Math is very much this way. And this comes in the form of confusion. So this is really, what is your confidence level on learning and growth? And a lot of people do not have any confidence in their ability to learn and grow. And this all leads back to education trauma. Education trauma and intelligence trauma. Our society, I've gone over all the different traumas. And perspective trauma, perspective abuse is the core to all of this. And there are, if you were to take like an umbrella of all the types of abuse, it's all perspective abuse. But perspective abuse has certain categories. And almost every one of us has endured this kind of trauma, but no one's talked about it. There is identity abuse. There is you being abused for being who you are. There is education abuse. There is you being abused for not learning fast enough or not learning or learning more than you should. There is intelligence abuse, where you are too smart so someone abuses you, or you're too stupid so somebody abuses you. And then there is, well, freedom abuse, which I like to call conformity abuse. And what this is this is the same thing, but it's got two different perspectives to it. Freedom abuse is when people look at you and they say things like, why do you get to be free and I don't? But that's 12th perspective talk. I need to translate that for you. What they're really saying is, you can't be different. How dare you show your identity around here? And the reason why is because we're all enslaved in these expectations. And when you are enslaved by expectations and somebody comes along who's free, there's jealousy. It's, well, that's not fair. Why do you get to be away from the expectations, but I've got to conform or I'm going to get beaten? And so it's very much a, this isn't fair. It's unjust. So people can feel, abusers really, especially, they feel the unjust. They know on a deep psychological level that it's not fair. And so this is like the leading cause of all abuse. This is it right here, is it's not fair. Why do you get to not conform, but everyone else does? You need to get back in your box because I have to be in my box. Remember, we're mirrors. So they end up abusing us because we are not obeying the expectations. And now you have freedom or conformity abuse. So every one of us is dealing with some sort of slavery. Every one of us is dealing with it's not safe to be ourselves. Every one of us is dealing with, it's not safe to learn or grow. And in addition to that, we're not allowed to speak. Our voices are taken away from us. And we are now dealing with voice or speech abuse. And when you look at the Constitution, this is our society and our culture. But when you look at our Constitution, you're talking about freedom of speech is violated, our freedom of identity and our freedom of choice is being violated. And it's not being violated by a government so much as it's being violated by all of the people under that government. However, the government has put up a whole bunch of, you got to do X. Basically, it's the money. It's all the money. It's the money has become such a driven profit business factor in our culture that it's all anyone cares about is resources. We're back to the economics again. And resources, and then that concept of profit, resources and profit. And because of that, that is now the determining factor for every decision being made, which puts pressure for time and productivity onto everybody. Insurance companies have to do X amount within a certain time period. Schools have to do a certain amount within a certain time period. Businesses have to do a certain amount within a certain time period. It's productivity and deadline, because that is going to equate to profit and resource. And now all of these people who are under that umbrella are now feeling that pressure. And now we're into the slavery aspect of it, not being free, because they are threatened if they don't not produce within a certain time. And that's the whole mindset. Produce within a certain time. And when you are in that produce within a certain time, that now you're in a system. Now you're in a slave concept. Now you're being farmed for your resources. And that's all it is. It's that produce within a certain time period. Meet a quota. And that's all it is. You got to meet a quota. You got to have a certain X, and you have to have it done by a certain time. We do this to our children. We do it to our parents. We do it to everybody until and unless you get out of the system. And what's that's doing is it is interfering now with our ability to learn and grow. Children have this abused right off the bat, the ability to learn and grow. Our identities, our autonomy is taken from us. The slavery and the freedom, that's our authority, that is taken away from us. And this compromises our mental health. Our voices are directly linked into our autonomy and our authority. And our ability to learn and grow is our ability to get free, to change. But we were put in a system where now that we're doing this under this produce within a certain time period, by the time we all hit about 6 years old, 6 and 7, we had these massive amounts of expectations. For God's sakes, we measure our children through speech development to make sure they're doing it on time because we are so adamant for looking for problems. The problem is now we've got these metric expectations that, oh, if you don't meet them, you're falling behind. And now you've got parents who are going, oh my God, they're not gaining weight. You got to eat because you're not in the right percentile. Now we're back to the product within a certain time. I remember speaking to so many people. I remember a friend of mine, I mentioned milkshakes and he got enraged. About an hour later, he was finally able to calm down enough to explain that because, and he is like one of the leading COVID doctors in New York City. He's an immunologist. He's fucking smart. And as a child, because his parents were so concerned about this, oh, he's not growing fast enough, they literally forced him to eat milkshakes for like 2 to 3 years of his life, to the point where here he is now 45, 50 years old, and he's traumatized over the word milkshake. And he's smart, really fucking smart. It is this, it's all back to the way we parent and the way we teach. Over and over again, it's back to the way we parent and the way we teach. And it's just, we don't know. So there is nothing that, rule number one in my world is you get rid of the time. The very first thing you do is get rid of time. When my daughter freed from the system, we went over to homeschooling, the very first thing I said is time does not exist. There's no time. Get rid of it. Just out the door. You can have time or you can have a quota, but you can't have both because now you're looking at slave. You can have a certain time to do something or you can have a certain, we have to have this done, this amount done. You can't have both. As soon as you have both, now you are in a slave mindset. Now, what this is doing is, bottom line is there are all of these metric expectations. And because we are so programmed for these metric expectations, we are putting them on our children without realizing it. And during their developmental years, that is causing so much problems. That is, first of all, raising and conditioning children into this mindset. And that is causing significant damage to who and what they are. It is interfering with their autonomy and their authority, and it's traumatizing their relationship with learning. So now you've got a lot of people who are growing up averse to learning and realizing, and now they underestimate themselves because they don't think they can. The problem is it requires education, healing, and growth in order to get out of trauma. But you've got a lot of people who have this severe abusive association with learning and education. So now they're underestimating their ability to heal themselves. So they sit in the mud and they don't try. They don't even try. They're done. They quit. So it's this real concept of realizing how much you're underestimating yourself. We really need to redefine what we realize and what we know the human mind can do. And that is it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were discussing my credentials, and I was going over how much knowledge I have, and she goes, "How is that possible?" Well, I studied for 30 years. And once you unlock higher thinking, because you're at a higher frequency, you're able to upload data faster. This is the part of the human psychology that no one knows about, that no one takes into account. That the more you learn, the more your frequency increases. So you upload data faster. Is it data or data? It's data. Thank you, Star Trek. You upload data faster, which is why, and I'm going to say this till I die, ADHD is not a mental condition. It is not a physical condition. It is just an individual who can do this. Neurodivergent people are just people who can do this. They're just intelligent. That's all. They're just intelligent. But they've been forced to slow down. So you've got somebody who exists at a higher frequency, most likely a 7th plus perspective, and they are functioning at a higher function, a 7th plus perspective. But you've got a bunch of 4th perspectives who are functioning at a lower frequency. And those people are all going, well, no, you need to slow down. You need to. So you've got a bunch of 7th perspectives who are used to living at, let's say, 96 hertz, but they're being told to slow down to like 54 hertz. And when you do that to somebody who has to function at 96 hertz, they're going to have symptoms. I actually have the formula. It's in dimension theory and energy and frequency. There's an actual formula for this that proves that ADHD is very much a symptom of physics, suppressed physics. That is what ADHD is. It is suppressed physics. So that you are taking somebody who is functioning at the 7th perspective and slowing them down to a 4th perspective. You are looking at a 3 perspective slowdown. And when you start doing this 3rd perspective, these perspective slowdowns, oh my God, it starts to become ADHD. I never had it. I never was forced to slow down ever because it didn't conform, because I found an outlet. My outlet was learning. An ADHD person, that extra energy is, oh my God, I have so much energy. I don't know what to do with it. You're supposed to be learning. You're supposed to be learning. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be learning. But you have a trauma response because you need to upload data. Oh my God, do you need to upload data? You must have data. That is the cure to ADHD. You have to have more data. But this massive education trauma is preventing that from happening. That education trauma is absolutely now in the way of you uploading the data. And here's the worst part, is these people who are told to slow down into this other 54 hertz, now they can't obtain any information because they're not running at the right frequency. And then they're labeled with ADHD and they're told that they're slow learners. They're not slow learners, they're different learners. They are 96 hertz learners. And I've done this. I've had this problem. My daughter has this problem. It's boring. Boredom means there's too much comfort. There's no adventure because it's too slow. That is exactly what the emotion boredom does. Is it communicates to you, you need to go faster. You need to go on adventure. But if you are forced to be at a 54 hertz dimension instead of at your 96 hertz dimension, oh my God, it's going to be really boring. It's like you're being forced to drive in a slow lane constantly. And it drives some people batty because you are supposed to be functioning at a higher frequency. And a higher frequency, you dance, you have to be free. Oh my God, do you have to be free? You have to dance, you have to be free, you have to do art, you have to learn, you have to do math, you have to do these things for your health. Your brain is hardwired to upload this data, and we're not doing it. I've been doing this since I was all my life. So for me, I've been nourishing myself. And this is it. It's knowledge nourishment. And if you do not get the knowledge nourishment you need, you are going to be messed up. which is why neurodivergent struggle, is because they're not getting the knowledge nourishment that they need. But the first rule of all education is consent, because consent is the difference between freedom, choice, authority, and imprisonment and abuse. And no one learns in an abusive, non-consensual environment. So the minute you have a child or a person who switches over to the fifth perspective, when that self-authority kicks in and consent is now mandatory for government, you're done. You're done. As soon as that fifth perspective switches over, governing another person is not going to comply with their mental health. Government is not going to work for them. That's why they leave the 9 to 5. The 9 to 5 doesn't work. Parenting no longer works. School systems no longer work for this person. Bosses telling you what to do will not work. Teachers not going to work. Any kind of authority figure trying to impose their own law on you, not going to work. It is highly incompatible with fifth perspectives and higher. There is no exception. This is solid. Every fifth perspective. This is the fifth perspective. And the fourth perspective, you are learning about law and protecting your vulnerability that you just learned from the third perspective with government. And at the end of the fourth perspective, you learn the fourth ethic, which is self-government. And that lesson graduates you to the fifth perspective. Either you do this or you don't. And the people who graduate to the fifth perspective become CEOs. They become entrepreneurs. They quit their day job. They must be homeschooled. They become self-learners. They become motivated. They become self-driven. They become neurodivergence. Every one of them. As soon as you hit the fifth perspective, you're done. You just clocked out of the system. But if you're not free, because they will hold you back. You know you're free when you can leave without any resistance. If there is resistance when you leave, you're not free. The amount of resistance you get when you leave is the metric of how free you are not. That tells you real clearly how free you are. Leave. Just try. See what happens. Because as soon as you leave and you're met with resistance, you were never free to begin with. Now you've got the fifth perspectives who graduate to the fifth perspective. You've got the fourth perspectives who graduate to the fifth perspectives. Suddenly the government doesn't work for them. Every one of them develops yeah, okay, that's nice. You go do your thing. I'm going to go over here and do my thing. Now, the beautiful thing is at this point, you've got about 5 ethics at least. You have 5 core ethics and, well, you have 4 core ethics and you have other sub-ethics that come with learning those core ethics. It's like 2 ethics per core ethic. So you literally walk away at this point with like 15 core ethics. When you have these core ethics, 15 ethics total, it absolutely keeps you ethically in check. Your standards and morals become greater than, more than the actual government, and you don't answer to them anymore. You're like, yeah, you're over there doing your thing, but the law, the officers, the police department, the government, yeah, that doesn't apply to me because I'm more moral than they are. That's when you realize you are more moral than they are, that your standards for ethics are higher than theirs. And suddenly you're going, yeah, that's nice. You do your thing. And you separate yourself. So this is where we see entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs. This is where we see homeschooling start, self-learners really take off, neurodivergence start. This is where we see a lot of self-motivation and a lot of self-guidance. That's all fifth perspective. Now, this is where you really establish your self-authority. This is where self-authority is now officially in a danger of being threatened, because if you cannot claim your self-authority, trauma happens. This happens when the child is 5 years old and they switch over. You can be born into this perspective. You can be like 2 or 3 and end up with this perspective. So now you've got a 3-year-old, and this very much is the case in a lot of cases. You end up with a 3-year-old who is more ethical than their fourth perspective parents, trying to tell them what they should do. And the parent is going, or the child is going, yeah, no, I have a right to my authority. I was this child. So now you've got, and these are children who are neurodivergent. If you are a neurodivergent, you are a fifth perspective. You are. So now you have to have your self-authority. And if you don't, it's non-consensual. If you don't consent to being governed, it's in our Declaration of Independence. It is in our Declaration of Independence that you have to consent to being governed. This isn't shit I'm making up. Thomas Jefferson knew this. He put it in our Declaration of Independence that you have to consent to being governed. Bottom line. And these are all of the ways that we consent or don't consent to being governed. The 9-to-5 job, the parenting, the school, the bosses, the teachers, the government. Which is why a person who's been unemployed for so long, or not unemployed, who's been self-employed for so long, they're told, oh, why don't you go get a day job? What? And be governed? No. They cannot be governed. That is going to be non-consensual. That's going to be non-consensual governing. And then they're not going to be okay. A boss telling them what to do? Oh, no, I am my own boss now. I have learned self-government, which means once we get into the realization and the acceptance of, oh, we have to evolve, and all the perspectives are going to start kicking in and everyone's going to start evolving, the 9-to-5 job is going to die out because it's only good for people who are literally fourth perspective and under. It cannot apply to people who are fifth perspective and higher because people can't be governed once you hit this fifth perspective. It's not compatible, which is why millennials are leading the way for this massive, we're going to go out there and we're going to do our own thing. We do not consent anymore to being governed. So it's really, really a huge part of it. So the whole underestimating what you can and can't do is really a lack of defined resources. It's you don't know what the human mind is capable of. We really don't, because we are constantly putting a glass ceiling over ourselves with expectations. And then we are constantly lowering those standards. And we're lowering the standards. And we're lowering the standards. So now we have these insanely low standards and expectations for children, for people, so that we think when we see a genius, we go, oh my God, there. No, that's actually normal. There was some tests done in the 1960s by scientists where they evaluated kindergartners, 5 years old, and 98% of the 5-year-olds were geniuses. After attending school for 20 years, 15 years, they did the test again. They did it in a 5-year increment. And what they noticed was at 20 years old, 2% of them were geniuses. The school system literally took that 98% statistic and dumbed it down to 2%. And then the scientists proved that it was the school that did it to them. Our schools are designed to remove the genius factor from us. So I ask the question, what would we be like if they didn't? Now I know, because that would be me. I am what happens when you don't do that, because I found a way around it. When you find a way around it, you bypass the system. I found a way to bypass the system. I tell people constantly, I am not special. I am just unaltered. I'm just unaltered. There's something that I call an educational or a curious path. It's the curious pathway. And it's actually something I just put my daughter on for. I just educated my daughter on this for her homeschooling. She's got the curriculum. And the curriculum is read these English books, do these book reports, and then do these 3 history subjects and you've graduated from high school. And she literally has like a year and a half to do this. It's wonderfully calm. So now she's like, oh my God, so much time. What do I do? Learn. What do you want to study? So we were talking about what she wants to study. And this is your curious pathway. Your curious pathway takes your second perspective, which is curiosity, adventure, it's your imagination, and it's your love for mystery, clues. Everyone has this. This is very much part of our brain. If you don't have this, it's because it's already been taken out of you. These things have to be removed from you. Imagination is part of this, and imagination is removed from us. Mystery, clues, anomalies. These are all things that have to be removed from you if you don't have them. If you do have them and they were left untampered, you got them when you were 2 years old. They should still be there, but our schools literally remove them. Enabling removes them. Art is responsible for imagination. Rules destroys mystery, clues, anomalies. Boxed thinking destroys mystery. So in order to maintain your curiosity or get it back, it starts with art and imagination. It starts with creativity. And then from there, it's back to you need comfort. And this is how you revive it. You need art, creativity, and you need comfort. That's it. That is the ingredient for getting back your second perspective. You basically have a deficit of comfort, and as a result, you are most likely in a war zone mentality. You are in a prison concept, a prison mentality. So it's a matter of shifting you from prison mindset over to comfort. And then once you have your enough comfort, then you're going to feel the emotion boredom, and that is your clue that it's time to go adventure. Then when you go adventure, that is when you get it back. But most people have such a significant deficit of comfort that they're not doing it. And comfort is your first perspective. That is, you need a surplus of comfort, a surplus of luxury. And that is highly incompatible with our system, which is what I hear a lot of people say a lot of times is, how can I do this with the system? Priority. And then they come back with the money problem. I will not talk about the money problem here. I talk about that over in this podcast is not a conspiracy, because, well, you're going to have to boycott the system and leave it. You're going to have to come up with a strategy. And if you don't, then you can find a way around it. You're going to have to problem solve a way around it. And you can't problem solve without imagination. Catch-22, they did it on purpose, which is where I get into okay, let's break this down for you and let's show you how it's done. And yeah, that cycle is, there's a lot of economics in there as far as how we think and what we've been told. And I address all of that over in my other podcast. I don't discuss it here. So once you really prioritize comfort and you have your art, your creativity, your comfort, your luxury, you need a surplus of that. Now, what's happening is our day jobs are depleting it faster than we can replenish it. Well, and this is where our resources are. And because there's that constantly joy, by the way, and I'll say this almost every podcast, I'm going to say this, joy is the emotion that fuels your energy. So when you are in your comfort zone, you are supposed to be grounding yourself and energizing yourself. You need joy and you need what you love. Those are your two things. You need joy and you need what you love. That absolutely replenishes your comfort zone. That is your comfort zone. And then art, creativity, that gives you back your imagination. That gives you back your comfort so that finally you get to that mystery, art, clues, anomalies, and now you go adventure. You go adventure, you're in that second perspective. The third perspective is learning how to integrate and balance the both of them, comfort with adventure. You really want to learn how to balance those two things. If you don't learn how to balance those things, that's where you're end up going to flip back over into the fear, the prison. You're going to lose the comfort. The comfort is what contradicts the fear prison, so it keeps it in balance. And you lose the adventure the minute it tips over. The reason why is because you cannot be curious and adventuring if you don't feel safe, if you are not exercising your authority. And this is where self-authority is mandatory. There is this Colin Powell, he did a whole thing on children need structure. I could not disagree further. Oh my God, no, they fucking don't. Structure is what destroys this process. Structure destroys imagination, mystery, adventure, curiosity, the sixth perspective. No, children do not need structure. Children need purpose. People need purpose. That is what you need. Purpose is the why are you here compliments of Socrates. I've had some people say, well, that was before Socrates. Yes, yes, yes. But Socrates is the one who really rammed it down our throats and put it on the map. It's been a question that we've been asking for thousands of years. But I started with, I am very much Greek classic philosophy. I know there's pre-Socratic. I'm well aware of the work of Pythagoras. But my work starts with, well, it doesn't start with, but my work really is emphasis on the Socratic method, which is logic. And that is Plato's fault, which is all Socratic and classic Greek philosophy. So I credit Socrates with the why are we here, which is what is your purpose? And we have to have purpose. We have to have a goal. We have to have a mission. If you do not have a purpose, then you are literally drifting at sea with absolutely no direction to go to. It is a Sunday, and I'm debating on wrapping this down at only 52 minutes because it's a Sunday, and I think I'm going to do that. So, yeah, I'm going to do that. Thank you so much for your audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.